Hi, I'm Miles and this is the Make with Miles channel. Today we're going to be making a snowboard. Let's go. I'm in 8th grade and during this year, each student gets to pick a topic of their choice to study over the course of the year. We have to find a mentor who is an expert in their field, who is willing to work alongside the student to support the project. I love snowboarding and making things, so I decided that building a snowboard would be the perfect project for me. I was lucky to find an Oregon-based ski and snowboard manufacturer not far from where I live, Deviation Boardworks. Everyone at Deviation has been so helpful throughout the project, from teaching me about getting my graphics on the board, all the way through building and finally waxing the board. The first thing I had to do was design the graphics for the top sheet and the base material. I first started sketching out some ideas to figure out a rough plan of what I wanted the board to look like. Then I was able to get a template of the board shape. I then transferred the template onto some heavy watercolor paper. I taped it up to the wall and projected some of my sketches onto it and used a pencil to get a rough outline of the drawings. Once I had the rough drawings sketched out, I proceeded to finalize the drawings and add color. I first went over the graphite lines with micron pens, and then I started filling it in with watercolor pencils. I have this really awesome brush which you can fill with water, and when you squeeze it, the water will come out the end. This made the process so much easier because I didn't have to constantly be dipping my brush in the water. Once I was done drawing, I went to my local copy center and scanned my artwork. I then dropped them into Photoshop and used the clone stamp tool and the blending tool to fix any spots where the ink or watercolor bled out. I also added my logo and Deviation's logo on the top and bottom. After everything was finalized, I emailed Deviation the graphics and they printed it out on their very large printer. Then they used a process called dye sublimation to transfer the ink from the print to the top sheet and the bottom sheet. This process uses a heat press, which is what transfers the ink from one material to the other. The next thing we did was put the metal edges on. The metal edges are what allow you to make precise turns and carve down the hill. Once the edge is clamped to the base material, I used a dab of CA glue about every inch or so to attach the edge. Next, the core had to be cut and shaped. The core is made up of purple heart, ash, and poplar and is shaped on a CNC machine. The CNC also cuts holes for threaded inserts which allow you to attach the bindings. Now that we had all the components, it was time to start the glue up. First, we laid down the base material. Then we mixed a cup of epoxy and spread it evenly across the base. We laid down these rubber strips, which help dampen vibrations while you're riding. Then came the first layer of fiberglass. We poured another cup of epoxy and spread it evenly so it could soak through the fiberglass. Next came the core. During this whole process, we had to be very careful to make sure everything was lined up. Beforehand, we marked the center of the base material, core, and the metal plate that we are doing the whole process on top of, so we could line things up later. After the core was down, we added another layer of fiberglass with epoxy. We put the top sheet on and then the second metal plate on top. The metal plates had holes all around the sides, which allowed us to put zip ties through to keep everything nice and snug. The board was left in the press for approximately 30 minutes before it was pulled out. The shape was then cut out on the bandsaw and the board's edges were sanded on the belt sander. It was now my turn to use the orbital sander to sand down the Purple Heart to be even with the metal edges. I went progressively from 80 grit to 320, and after that I finished the Purple Heart with a coat of tung oil. I used a file with a small jig to create a 1-degree bevel on the metal edges. Zach then waxed the base using a heat gun and then buffed it out. For the most part, it was done. The only thing left to do was attach the bindings and have some fun. If you've watched some of my other videos, you'll notice that this one was a bit different. This was the first project that I've worked on with someone else, relying on them for some guidance and help along the way. For example, I was not able to perform every step of the build process due to potential liability issues. I learned a lot throughout this project and got to use some new materials and techniques that I've never used before. One thing I learned was how to digitize my art. I've never digitized or enlarged any artwork before, and that taught me a few things about resolution, color, and loss of detail, as graphics can change when digitized and printed in a larger format. I also got more comfortable reaching out to people for help, Prior to this project, I probably wouldn't have called up someone I didn't know. I want to give a big thanks to Deviation Boardworks for making this project possible. Without them, it probably wouldn't have happened. Also, don't forget to hit the like button, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.